So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, so last week we said loud and proud and somewhat defiantly that it's okay not to be okay. We said that although our culture is obsessively focused on unrealistically positive expectations, we know that we can't be happy all the time, and nor should we expect to be. This morning I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this and explain that sometimes the not okayness of life is actually a good thing. So where last week we said it's okay not to be okay, this week we're saying sometimes it's good not to be okay. So this is deep. We're going to dive straight in. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 7, the Apostle Paul says, therefore. Now, when you read the word therefore in the Bible, you should always ask yourself, what's it there for? And in most cases, it means that what is about to be said follows on very closely from what's just been said. And what's just been said is that the Apostle Paul's life has been going very well indeed. Thank you very much. Everything he's touched has turned to gold. Everything's been happy, sunshine, positive. It's been working. So he's been talking about a season in his life when his life was working. And perhaps you remember those days when you were still on plan A. And because you were either young or naive or arrogant, you thought that the reason your life was working so well was because of you. And you also thought that the way things were was how things were always going to be. Things were going well, your life was working, and you had no reason to assume anything would ever change. That's why they call the good times and not the preparing for the bad times. Because when they're good, they're just good, and you feel like you're the king of the world. So Paul has just finished saying, there was a season in my life when this is how it was. Everything that could go right went right. And it seemed like nothing for me could ever go wrong. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I think the reason that we get so upset when things go wrong is because we don't expect things to go wrong. As I said last week, we are obsessed in our culture with happiness. So obsessed that we don't know how to process it when something unhappy happens. And it makes us weak. Far softer than our parents were. 2,000 years ago in Greece, Stoic philosophers spoke about a thing that they called the premeditation of evil. So they would say to their students, what you should do is imagine the worst thing in life. Imagine it happening to you. Think about it every day. So that when it happens, or if it happens, you'll kind of be ready for it. And it won't. There was one guy called Epictetus. He said this to his students. He said, they were all men. He said, guys, what I want you to do tonight is I want you to go home. And when you kiss your wife, I want you to have a specific thought. As you hold her head in your hands, as you draw her body close to yours, as you bring her lips to your own, I want you to think that in the morning she could be dead.
Don't seem too happy.
This will do two things for you. First of all, it will prepare you to understand that the love you feel today eventually becomes the pain you will feel tomorrow. That's life. Eventually. The love you feel today, the happiness you enjoy today, eventually becomes the pain you endure tomorrow. And the second thing it will do for you is it will make you a far better kisser. Try it and see, prove me wrong. Anyway, notice please the train of thought. My life was going amazingly well, and so in order to. So this is a statement of purpose. He's saying my happiness was interrupted for a very specific reason, and he's brave enough to admit what the reason was. My ego was running out of control. It was working so well, everything I was touching was turning to so much gold. I was so persuaded of my own awesomeness. I thought nothing could ever go wrong in my life. And to stop that, notice what he says next. I was given. Now, in the ancient world, the word given is almost always used positively. There is no question that this word belongs on the positive end of the spectrum. So if you were sitting around the Christmas tree opening presents, this is the word you'd use. If you were talking about a diamond ring that your boyfriend gave you on Valentine's, this is the word that you would use. So to talk about something that you were given in the ancient world is to always talk about something positive, uplifting, and upbeat. So if you were reading this for the first time, your expectations would be rather high at this point. Paul, you were happy. Paul, your life was working. Everything you were touching was turning to gold. There was no bad thing in your life. And then in order to fulfill his purpose in your life, the God who loves you gave you something. What did you get, Paul? What were you given? I was given, he says, a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. When Paul uses the word thorn, he's thinking about this sort of thing, because this is a thorn, and as you can see, it's rather thorny. Now, in the ancient world, people used thorns to do the same job that they use barbed wire to do today. That is, to stop, or to slow down, or to entangle an enemy. So Paul is saying something rather puzzling and rather specific. He's saying, my life was going amazingly well, and then to stop all that, to slow all that down, to entangle all that, I was given this thing. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that your life is like 75% okay. Maybe your number is higher, maybe it's lower, I don't know. It's an arbitrary number. 75% of your life is not too bad. And if we were to do some kind of positivity exercise and hand out pieces of paper and a pen and ask you to write down all the things in your life that were good and that you were proud of and that you were satisfied with and that you were genuinely grateful for and thankful for, you could think of something to write, right? No one's life is completely bad. So 75%, not too bad. All right. But the problem is that the other 25% holds you back. There's 25% that you're absolutely not happy about, that you're not proud of, and that really isn't working all that well. That, for you, is your thorn in the flesh. That's your connection to this Bible passage. Your thorn is different from my thorn. Your thing is different from my thing. But sooner or later in this life, we all have a thing. Right? And the language is deliberately vague. And I think intentionally so. So when we talk about this, we could be talking about loneliness. We could be talking about unsatisfying work environment, or an unloving relationship, or an illness, or a weird personality thing. I know that's relevant for all of you. You know, it could be almost anything in life that holds you back, and it is quite often permanent. We're talking about a situation where the way it is just the way it is. Like there was this time in my life when it was working, and then this thing came along, and now this is it. This is the new reality. And just to be super clear, Paul is saying that this unpleasantness is something that he was given by God. So we're not talking about a trouble that he brought into his own life. We're not talking about a trouble that somebody else brought into his life. We're not talking about a trouble that happened just because of life. We're talking about a trouble that somehow God was responsible for. And it is so troubling, notice, that he calls it a messenger of Satan that torments. Perfect description, I think, because the word Satan in the Bible means the adversary, the accuser. And is that not just a perfect word to describe your 25%? It stands against you. It gets in your way. And it accuses you all day long. It reminds you of why and where you are a failure. It shows where you've gone and go wrong, where you slipped up. You don't need anyone else to point out what you shouldn't be proud of. You already know. And so he calls this a torment. This is the language of the boxing ring. It literally means to beat somebody up. So notice what he's saying. No sugarcoating this. They didn't teach us this in Sunday school. God gave me a gift of a thorn, and it torments me day after day, and it's kind of a messenger from Satan, so it hurts like hell. Now, I'm not an expert on the language here. I suppose I am an expert, but but I think maybe the word given is really the wrong word to use, is it not? Because the first half of the sentence is really positive. In order to do something in my life, I was given. Okay, I'm happy so far. But then the second half is entirely negative. What we're talking about is a painful thing that stops us being happy, that interrupts our life, that slows us down, that gets in our way, that makes it difficult. So surely, given that that is the case, the word given is the wrong word. Surely it would be more appropriate to say I was punished with a thorn. I was disappointed with a thorn. I was humiliated with a thorn. I was ripped apart with a thorn. Surely that would be more accurate, but not given. So why does Paul say that he was given this? I mean, this is dark. This is the theology of 50 Shades of Grey almost. Maybe he learned that he was thinking about his problems in the wrong way. Maybe he came to a place in life where he thought, what would happen if instead of seeing this problem as a complete disaster, I instead saw it as a problem with a purpose? I mean, that may not be true. But what would happen if I thought about it as though that were true? Maybe this torment to me is like Harvard, and rather than being, depressed about it, I'm supposed to learn something from it. And what if instead of thinking that this is something that makes my life worse and nothing else, I think of it as something that makes my life better? Wouldn't that be something? I mean, it's dark and it's twisted, but what's the worst that could happen? I'm dealing with the pain anyway. What would be the worst that could happen if I explored for something light in the dark? So let's just gently, and I do mean gently, ask ourselves this question. Maybe we spend so much time fighting against our problems, or complaining about them, or trying to find a way out of them, that we don't stop to ask, what's the silver lining here? Maybe this is one of the most profound and dark and difficult truths of the Christian faith, a truth that makes people think Christianity might actually be crazy. I mean, what we're talking about here is a person who is so stupid that he comes to a place in life whereby he views his adversity as a gift from his heavenly Father. And that instead of fighting against it and resisting it, he comes to the conclusion whereby he approaches this difficult season of life as though it was from God for his good. So, gentle question, how differently would you have gone through that thing you went through if you thought about it as though it was a gift from God? Now I know, okay, I get it. But wait a moment. You can stone me at the end, but wait a moment. One of our default reactions in life when the wheels come off is to feel sorry for ourselves. And of all the sins, and I am going to use the word sin, of all the sins, self-pity is unique in that there's no trade-off of pleasure. Self-pity starts ugly, it stays ugly, and it ends ugly. I don't think any of the other sins are like that. Take greed, for example. When you're driving to work, stuck in traffic on a Friday morning, and you allow yourself a 5-minute fantasy of what your life would be like if you won the lottery that night. And for 5 minutes, when you think about what you buy and what you sail and what you drive, there is a trade-off of pleasure. You are distracted from the aches and pains and the frustrations of traffic. It's kind of nice, right? It gives you something. Only eventually does greed in life become ugly and distorted. Take lust as another example. Very obvious trade-off. There's pleasurable feelings, pleasurable emotions, yada, yada, yada. Only eventually does lust extract its true price. Laziness, another example. When laziness starts out as a thought or an act, it's awesome. There's a definite trade-off. I'm going to stay in bed till 11. I'm going to play Xbox. I'm going to have Cheetos for dinner. I'm going to wear pajamas all day, whatever. Only eventually, only later, does laziness extract its price and become ugly and damaging and disappointment. In all sin, almost, there's a hook that damages you, but over the hook there's a really juicy, tasty worm, right? That's why we bite, because we're in it for the worm. Where's the worm in self-pity? It just isn't there. It's just a hook. It starts bad, it stays bad, it ends bad. If you got a sin today, I've never said that in 20 years. If you've got a sin today, I'm in trouble. Self-pity, it's useless. It is a completely useless emotion. So maybe that's the deal here with this deep, dark, difficult theology. My life has this thing, and yes, it's horrible. But I may as well embrace the horror and get on with it and see where I end up. Next sentence. He says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it from me. So when he says 3 times, he doesn't mean 3 times as in 1, 2, 3. He means 3 times as in, I prayed about this a lot. Threefold prayers in the ancient world are kind of symbolic of that. So for example, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus, he wants to get out of this situation somehow, and so he prays 3 times. So when you pray 3 times in the ancient world, you're serious. So when he says this, what he's saying is, I went through this thing in life and I did not accept it. I was not okay with my 25%. And there were days and there were nights when I was resisting and fighting and struggling and feeling sorry for myself and doing everything I could to undo this thing that spoiled my life. And who would call him a bad scholar for doing otherwise? So I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. But, the word but is a beautiful, not beautiful, it is an accurate word to describe the interruptions of life. I was on plan A, but I had a great relationship with my children, but I was planning for a great retirement, but I thought she loved me, but. So I prayed for this thing to go. I prayed for my life to get better, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. In other words, no. And the way this sentence is written, I won't get into the details, but the way it's written means this. It means he prayed about it, he got his answer, and then for the rest of his life he was comforted by the answer he got. He prayed about it, he accepted that it wasn't going to get better, that the way it was the way it was going to stay, that this pain, this hurt, whatever, was his new reality. But going forward, he was going to be okay about it because of the answer he was given. I can keep going. My 25% is not going to hold me back. It's not going to distract me from the 75%. It's not going to keep me down. It's not going to knock me back. I can be good with not being good. I can be okay with not being okay. I can press on and do what needs to be done. And so he talks about power. The word power in the Bible means power to get stuff done. Every single time the word power is used in the Bible, it means this: power to do. Power to do. So what Paul is saying here is that this thing that could have held me back, it didn't hold me back. This thing that almost knocked me down, it didn't knock me down. This thing that should have finished me, it didn't finish me. Yes, it was nasty. Yes, it made me weak. No, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But you know what? I've gone through it and I'm still able to do what I need to do. And I've noticed this about life, just like you have too. When it's bad, you can still do what you need to do. It's harder. It's a lot harder. But you can still get on with it. And those are the times in life that count. When it's easy, it's easy. Anyone can do that. But when it's hard for you to get up every morning, when it's hard for you to cope with what you have to cope with and do what you have to do, here, if ever there's a sentence in the Bible that's for you, this is it. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So having discussed this thorn of his, and having said it won't stop me doing what I need to do, he's made peace with his 25%. And he can say quite openly to his congregation, guys, I've got this thing. Kind of embarrassing. But it doesn't stop me. In fact, it gives me an edge. It gives me a few yards that my happy counterparts don't have because it stops me being overconfident. So, and here's the point, of course, if I can get it done in imperfection, so can you. I mean, how great a morning must this have been to have been in church. Here you have the leader of the early Christian movement standing before his congregation saying, you know what, I was arrogant. I was self-absorbed, I was overconfident, and it all fell apart. And to be honest, I'm glad it fell apart. It needed to. And it didn't get better, and I am weak in so many ways. And if it's okay for me not to be okay, it's okay for you not to be okay as well. If I can be good with not being good, maybe you can be good with not being good too. Not to minimize your pain in any way, but just to say there's got to be a way of pushing through for you. And notice, please, of course, how unlike modern Christianity this is. Modern Christianity sells itself as the perfect answer to everything in life. And it finds its ultimate expression in the living of a perfect life. So here's me. I live a perfect life. I have a perfect wife who's pretty. I have a huge bank account. I have perfect kids with perfect grades. My dog thinks I'm awesome. Even my cat likes me. I couldn't have a bad day even if I tried. And if my life works, maybe your life should work too. Maybe you should try and be like me. And so the pressure on everyone is to pretend. You get that message when you watch Christianity on television, don't you? I'm perfect, be like me. And it's a joke. When I first moved to Canada, I got talking to, or was talked to by, more accurately, one of those guys selling multiple level miracle cure things. It was some kind of prune juice. I think it actually was prune juice. A very expensive prune juice, probably. But the shtick with this prune juice was that it was a miracle cure for, like, if you took this prune juice, you would not get sick. So all you had to do was take some of this prune juice and you would never get sick. The only problem was that this guy was sick. And I'm okay with sick. Like, in life you get sick. Right? You get sick, you grow old, if you're lucky, and, eventually you die. Am I educating anyone? Like, that's life, and I'm okay with that. But to listen to the verbal gymnastics that this guy went through, and what was particularly amazing about it was that he had cancer. But he couldn't say it. Couldn't say the C word. So because he was selling this miracle juice that stopped you getting sick, it was impossible for him to be sick. And so instead of a sickness, he had a health challenge that he was in the process of overcoming. When did reality become so unacceptable to our culture? When did it become so unacceptable to have a bad day or bad news? When did it become so unacceptable for things to not work for a while? And for the wheels to fall off? And to say, you know what? Life is hard right now. What's wrong with that? Not a thing. And the people who were against Paul in this church, they were a bit like this. Their brand of Christianity was perfect. My life is perfect. I have better experiences of God than you do. My life works better than you do. I'm better off than you are. I'm healthier than you are. Everything about me is perfect. And so the congregation were like, maybe we should listen to them because Paul's a bit of a train wreck. Total train wreck. Paul takes the other view, though. Paul's view is that my Christianity is not demonstrated in the absence of my problems, it is demonstrated in the presence of them. The other night I had a teaching moment with my son. It was a great teaching moment because I literally had to do nothing. So he clogged the toilet. It's probably me that clogged it. He got the blame, but anyway, that's cool. So he clogged the toilet, and I'm working at the kitchen table, and I can hear him with a plunger trying to fix the toilet. And for a split second, I'm like, oh, got to go fix the toilet. And then I'm like, no. Because sooner and later in life, you got to deal with your own stuff. Right? You don't find character when you have no problems. You find character when you're up to your neck in them, when it's hard. And so he says, that is why, for Christ's sake, I, embrace the perversity and the darkness. I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. I never admired a single person who had an easy life. The stories that I like, the ones that I celebrate, are the ones where the hero has to overcome an obstacle. And that is why I admire so many of you. Because your life is not simple. Every day you get up, and there's something that you have to overcome. And in the absence of perfection, you do your best to live your best life. And that is not just admirable. That is firmly Christian. And I applaud you for it. Do we have time for questions? Hopefully not. No, we don't. We're a minute late. So good. Let's pray, then we'll go. May God bless you and keep you. May He make His loving face to shine upon you and those you love. And may your heart and your head and your home and your whole life be blessed with the peace of God, now and always. Amen.